I'd come to this sticky floor joint called the Crescent Moon on a whim, nursing a Sazerac after another soul-sucking shift at the ad agency downtown. New Orleans had chewed me up and spit me out 6 months ago, fresh from a breakup in Chicago that left me questioning if love was just another humid fever dream. At 28, Charles Whitaker, I was the guy who planned everything. Spreadsheets for grocery lists, color-coded calendars for heartbreak recovery. But that night, with the saxophone's wail curling through the air like Spanish moss, I let impulse drag me to the bar stool nearest the stage. Alex was the musician, all lean muscle and faded tattoos peeking from his rolled-up sleeves. His voice a gravelly drawl that wrapped around Leonard Cohen's lyrics like kudzu on wrought iron. He was 32, I'd learn later, with a mop of chestnut curls that begged to be tugged and laugh lines that deepened when he smirked at the crowd's applause. By the end of his set, the bar had emptied to a skeleton crew, me included, lingering like a ghost. He packed up his acoustic, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, and sauntered over, smelling of bourbon and bayou earth. "You look like you needed that more than the rest of 'em," he said, sliding onto the stool beside me, his knee brushing mine under the scarred oak bar. It was electric, that touch, innocent, accidental, but it lit me up like Bourbon Street neon. "I'm Charles," I managed, my voice steadier than my heart. "And yeah, guilty. That's it. It hit different." "Alex," he replied, his grin crooked, revealing a dimple that made my stomach flip. "What brings a suit like you to a hole like this? Escape in the corporate swamp?" I laughed, surprising myself. "Something like that. Just moved here. Figured the voodoo might fix what therapy couldn't." We talked until last call, the conversation flowing like the jazz riffs he'd just spun, easy, improvisational. He was from Baton Rouge, raised on crawfish boils and Catholic guilt, chasing gigs from Nashville to Austin before landing in NOLA. Divorced young, no kids, he said with a shrug that didn't quite reach his eyes. I spilled about my ex, the one who'd ghosted me after 5 years, leaving me with a sublet and a therapy bill. By 2 a.m., as the bartender flipped chairs onto tables, he walked me out into the drizzle-slick streets, his jacket over my shoulders. At my apartment door on Esplanade, he leaned in, breath warm against my ear. "Come back tomorrow night. Play you something just for you." I did. God, did I? The next week blurred into a haze of stolen moments. I'd clock out early from drafting pitch decks for bourbon brands, trading fluorescent hell for the Crescent's amber glow. Alex's sets became my ritual, sitting front row, nursing a whiskey neat, watching his fingers dance over frets like they were mapping constellations. Afterward, we'd wander the quarter. Beignet at Café du Monde dusted with powdered sugar that stuck to our lips, ghost tours where he'd mock the guide's tall tales but squeeze my hand in the shadows of St. Louis Cathedral. One night, under the live oaks dripping with resurrection fern on City Park Avenue, he kissed me. Slow, deliberate, tasting of chicory coffee and promise. His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my jaw, and when he pulled back, his eyes held mine like he was memorizing the color of my soul. "Your trouble, Charles Whitaker," he murmured, forehead against mine. "The good kind." We fell hard, fast, in that quintessentially Southern way. Passionate porches and midnight confessions. My place became our haven. A shotgun apartment with creaky cypress floors and a balcony overlooking the streetcar line. We'd make love tangled in sheets that smelled of his sandalwood soap. His body a landscape of scars and stories. Faint burn marks on his ribs from a kitchen mishap in his 20s. A tattoo of a crescent moon on his collarbone that he said was for his mama. He was all contrasts. The rough-hewn musician who quoted Faulkner unprompted. The man who belted out Patsy Cline covers but whispered poetry in my ear at dawn. But cracks spiderwebbed early if I'd paid attention. He'd dodge questions about family, changing the subject with a strum of his guitar or a trail of kisses down my spine. Phone calls at odd hours, late nights when he thought I was asleep. Muffled voices that made his jaw tighten. "Old friends," he'd say, waving it off. "Nothing to sweat." I believed him because I wanted to, because in his arms the world made sense. We built a rhythm. Mornings with him humming over black coffee, brewing chicory strong enough to wake the dead. Evenings where he'd play originals, ballads about lost rivers and lovers who lingered like humidity. One song, Delta Ghosts, was about a man haunted by what he couldn't leave behind. Lyrics that twisted my gut, but when I asked, he just smiled sadly. Arts for the ghosts? Darlin'. We live for the light. By month 2 I was all in. I met his bar buddies. Rita the bartender with her dragon tattoos and encyclopedic knowledge of hurricanes. Jamal, the sax player who teased Alex about finally snagged Jin a city boy. They ribbed us like an old married couple, and it felt real, rooted. I even started dreaming of permanence. Maybe I'd quit the agency, open a little spot blending ads with live music events. Alex could headline. We'd build something unbreakable. Then came the weekend in the bayou. He surprised me with a drive out to his secret spot, a cypress knee-dotted pond off Highway 90, where egrets fished in the shallows and the air hummed with cicadas. We rented a flatboat, him poling us through the still water like some modern Huck Finn, his laughter echoing off the Spanish moss. That night, under a blanket of stars thick as gumbo roux, he made love to me slow and reverent, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I love you, Charles. More than the music. More than anything." Tears pricked my eyes. "I love you too," I choked out, holding him close. It was the kind of love that reshapes you, raw, redemptive, the stuff of Southern Gothic novels, but with a queer twist that felt like coming home. We floated back to the city on a high, but the real storm brewed on the horizon. It hit during Mardi Gras, that fevered carnival of excess where the lines between joy and chaos dissolve like sugar in absinthe. Alex had a prime gig at the Crescent, 3 sets amid the bead-throwing revelry, and I'd pulled strings at work to join the parade circuit with him. We donned masks. Mine a feathered harlequin, his a simple black Zorro that accentuated the mischief in his eyes. The streets pulsed with brass bands and costumed hordes, the air thick with the scent of fried dough and spilled daiquiris. We danced through it all, his hand firm in mine, stealing kisses behind floats shaped like fleur-de-lis giants. But midway through the night, as confetti rained like golden tears, his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. He fished it out, glanced at the screen, and his face drained of color. The easy grin replaced by a mask of its own, tighter than the one on his face. "Gotta take this," he muttered, weaving through the crowd toward a shadowed alley off Decatur. I followed at a distance, the parade's roar fading to a dull throb in my ears. He leaned against a graffiti-scarred wall, phone to his ear, voice low and urgent. "Mama, I told you not tonight. Please, not now." A pause, then softer, laced with something like defeat. "Yeah, I know. I miss her too. But I'm trying to build something here." Her. The word snagged like a thorn. I pressed against the cool brick of a neighboring building, heart hammering. He didn't mention me, didn't mention us. Just promises, vague and weighted. "I'll come home soon. For the anniversary." He hung up, raking a hand through his curls, and for a split second, I saw it. The exhaustion etched deep, the secrets he carried like an invisible guitar case. He spotted me then, emerging from the shadows with a forced smile. "Hey, stranger. Thought you got swept up in the crew." But his eyes darted, guilty. "Who's her?" I asked, the words sharper than intended, cutting through the distant trumpet blasts. He flinched. "My sister. Sick again. Mama's frettin'." It was smooth, too smooth, the lie slipping out like a well-rehearsed chord. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But doubt seeded, a tiny alligator eye breaking the swamp's surface. The next weeks it festered. I'd catch him staring at his phone during breakfast, thumbs hovering but never typing. Gigs where he'd zone out mid-song, eyes distant as the gulf. Our lovemaking shifted, still passionate, but edged with desperation, like he was memorizing me against some impending loss. "What's eating you?" I'd press, tracing the moon tattoo on his chest. "Nothin', Cher," he'd murmur, pulling me closer. "Just the blues." But the blues were his trade, and this was something darker. Climax crept in on a muggy April evening, the kind where thunder rumbles like a bad omen over Lake Pontchartrain. I'd planned a surprise. Reservations at Commander's Palace for turtle soup and bread pudding souffle, a bottle of Sauternes to toast 6 months, dressed in my best button-down, hair tamed with product that smelled like vetiver. I swung by the Crescent early to snag him after soundcheck. The bar was quiet, pre-rush hour hush broken only by the clink of glasses as Rita prepped. Alex's guitar case lay open on stage, but he was nowhere. I texted, "Outside?" Palace awaits. No reply. Minutes ticked. Then, from the back alley, voices heated, intimate. I pushed through the screen door, the humid air slapping me like a betrayal. There, under the sodium glow of a flickering bulb, stood Alex. Not alone. A woman, mid-30s, sharp bob haircut and a sundress that screamed uptown polish, had her arms around him. Not a hug of comfort. This was possession. Her lips on his neck, his hands on her waist, hesitant but not pushing away. "We can't keep doing this, Becca," he was saying, voice raw. "I told you it's over. For good this time." She pulled back, eyes flashing. "Over? After everything? You think you can just waltz into that life with him and pretend we didn't build a world? What about Ellie?" Ellie. The name from the call. Not a sister. My world tilted. I stumbled back, the door creaking like a final note. Alex's head snapped up, green eyes widening in horror. "Charles, wait!" But I was already running, the alley blurring into the quarter's labyrinth. Past iron-lace balconies and voodoo shops hawking gree-gree bags that couldn't ward off this curse. He caught me 2 blocks down on Royal Street, where gas lamps flickered like dying fireflies. "Stop! Please! God! Let me explain." His hand clamped my arm, spinning me to face him. Rain started then, fat drops splattering the cobblestones, soaking us through. "Explain what?" I snarled, yanking free, chest heaving. "That you're married? That Ellie is your daughter? How long, Alex? How many lies behind that goddamn stage?" His face crumpled, rain mingling with tears. 2 years. Becca and I. We were kids in Baton Rouge. Married at 22. Ellie came quick after. But I couldn't, Charles, I couldn't live the lie anymore. Not after her. He choked, the words tumbling like a flood. The church, the family, they expected the white picket fence, the Sunday suppers. But I'm gay. Always was. I left, came here to start over. Filed for divorce last year, but she won't sign. Says it's for Ellie. And I send money, visit when I can. But us? This? It's the first real thing in my life. Betrayal burned hotter than Tabasco. You hid her. Hid everything. While I was falling. While we were building. I was scared, he whispered, stepping closer, voice breaking. Scared you'd run if you knew the mess. The custody fights, the small town stares. I love you, Charles. More than the fear. But I should have told you. Thunder cracked overhead, illuminating his anguish. Vulnerable, broken, the musician stripped bare. Part of me wanted to hold him, to drown in that green-eyed sea again. But the wound gaped too wide. Love isn't built on ghosts, I said, voice steady despite the storm inside. Call me when the truth's all you got left. I walked away, leaving him in the downpour, the city swallowing us both. The fallout was a hurricane of its own, winds of rage, floods of grief. I ghosted the Crescent, trading its warmth for sterile gym sessions and overtime at the agency, burying myself in client decks until my eyes blurred. Friends noticed. Jamal texted, "Man, what happened? Alex is a wreck up there." Rita called, her voice gravel and gumbo. "Give him a chance, sugar. Ain't nobody perfect in this town." But perfection was the lie I'd bought. Sleepless nights replayed it all. His songs now laced with poison. Our Bayou weekend a cruel prelude. Ellie, 5 years old. I pieced together from fragments he'd let slip, innocent collateral in his double life. How could I compete with that? With blood ties and Baptist guilt? Yet, in the quiet hours, doubt crept. Was I any better? Hiding behind my planner app, avoiding my own family's calls from Chicago. Dad's homophobic jabs still echoing from Thanksgiving 3 years back. We'd both been cowards in our ways. 3 weeks in, the agency sent me to a conference in Austin, ironic that Music City escape. I wandered 6th Street alone, bars spilling blues and brews, but none held his ghost. On a whim, I texted, "Safe travels. Heard the set was killer last night." Neutral ground, an olive branch disguised as chit-chat. His reply came swift. "Miss you. Can we talk? Coffee, no strings." I met him at a po' joint on Magazine Street, neutral turf with formica tables and the sizzle of oysters frying. He looked hollowed, cheeks sharper, curls unkempt, the guitar calluses on his fingers picking at a napkin. "Thanks for comin'." he started, voice low. I know I don't deserve it. Start with the truth, I said, stirring sugar into chicory that tasted like ash. All of it. And he did, pouring it out like a confessional. The shotgun wetting to appease his preacher father. The nights staring at the ceiling while Becca slept, wondering if he could will himself straight. Ellie's birth. A tiny miracle with his eyes and her curls that kept him tethered. The divorce papers he'd signed, but she contested, dragging it through Louisiana courts with claims of moral abandonment. Visits to Baton Rouge every other month. Playing daddy in a house that felt like a cage. I hid it 'cause I thought it'd protect you, he admitted, eyes downcast. From the ugliness. But it poisoned us instead. I listened, the weight settling like humidity. It hurts, Alex, knowing I was the side story. You weren't, he insisted, reaching across but stopping short. You were the whole damn book. Still are. We didn't kiss, didn't promise. But as I left, his hand brushed mine. A spark in the ruins. Summer sweltered in, turning New Orleans into a steam bath of jasmine and jazz funerals. I threw myself into work, pitching a campaign for a LGBTQ plus youth center that felt like personal penance. Billboards of smiling kids in rainbow tees, taglines about owning your story, irony bit deep. My own narrative was a fragmented reel, spliced with Alex's shadow. We fell into a tentative orbit. Texts evolving to calls, coffee turning to walks along the levee where the river's brown churn mirrored my muddled heart. He'd update me on Ellie, her obsession with fireflies, the way she finger-painted hurricanes. Photos smuggled via his phone, her gap-toothed grin a dagger and a bomb. She asks about Uncle Charles's now, he'd say, half-joking, and I'd laugh through the ache. One evening, post a Saints tailgate where the air crackled with grill smoke and Zydeco, he invited me to a session at his tiny garden district rental. A shotgun shack with peeling gingerbread trim and a porch swing creaking like old bones. No expectations, he promised, handing me a Abita beer. Just music. Inside, the space hummed with his essence. Sheet music scattered like autumn leaves, a half-eaten muffuletta on the counter, his acoustic propped against a sagging couch. He strummed softly, a new piece, levee lights, lyrics weaving our story. The flood of doubt, the drought of trust, a bridge towards something resilient. His voice, that velvet rasp, pulled me in, and when the last chord faded, I crossed the room, cupping his face. Kiss me, I whispered. He did, tentative at first, then fervent, hands roaming like they were reclaiming lost territory. We tumbled to the couch, clothes shedding like inhibitions, bodies reconnecting in a tangle of limbs and labored breaths. It was different now. Not the frantic passion of new love, but deeper, scarred. A lovemaking etched with forgiveness's fragile ink. Afterward, sweat slick and spent, he traced my spine. I want this, Charles. For real. But it means fasten the storm. Courts, family, all of it. I nodded against his chest, the moon tattoo rising and falling with his breath. Then we face it together. But storms don't wait for fair weather. Becca's lawyer served papers the next week. Accusations of alienation. Demands for full custody. Painting Alex as the villain who abandoned his family for sinful pursuits. The word sinful landed like a slap, echoing the sermons he'd fled. Court dates loomed in Baton Rouge. A 2-hour drive through piney woods that felt like purgatory. We prepped like soldiers. Me drilling him on testimony, role-playing with Rita as the icy judge. Stick to facts, I'd coach. Ellie's welfare first. But nights before, he'd pace, guitar silent, bourbon his only companion. What if I lose her? He'd rasp, eyes wild. She's the only good I did right. You won't? I'd assure, pulling him down, but fear gnawed mine too, for this fragile us. The hearing was a circus of small-town justice. Wood-paneled courtrooms smelling of varnish and vendettas, Becca's family in starched pews, glaring daggers. She took the stand first, voice quivering. He left us for a man. How's that stable for our girl? Ellie waited in a side room, oblivious, drawing with crayons that Alex had packed. His turn came and he broke, voice steady but eyes pleading. I love my daughter, more than breath, but I can't be the father she deserves if I'm lying to myself. Charles, he's family now, the kind that builds, not breaks. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a drawl like molasses, eyed us over bifocals. This court's seen plenty of heartache. But blood don't always mean chains. She granted joint custody. Visitation expanded, divorce finalized with a warning. Make it work, Mr. Landry. For that little girl. Relief crashed like a second-line parade as we spilled into the hallway. Alex crumpling against me, sobs muffled in my shoulder. Becca stormed past, eyes red, but paused. For Ellie, she bit out. Don't fuck it up. We didn't celebrate that night. Drove back silent, hands clasped over the console. Home, with Ellie texts buzzing. Daddy home? Miss hugs. Reality rooted deeper. Fall brought tentative normalcy. Alex gigging less, picking up shifts at a coffee roastery to stabilize. Me freelancing, weaving our story into pitches for queer-owned brands. We blended lives. Ellie's visits every other weekend. Her tiny hands and hours as we strolled Audubon Park, feeding ducks stale po' boys. She called me Charlie, with a lisp that melted defenses. Her questions innocent barbs. Why don't you live with mommy too? Alex fielded them gently. Families come in all shapes, Bean. Like jazz, different notes, same song. But undercurrents swirled. His mama, a steel magnolia from the bayou, showed up unannounced one crisp October afternoon. Bible in hand, face lined with unspoken sermons. She eyed me like I was the devil's own, but stayed for gumbo, thawing over Ellie's chatter. He always was a dreamer, she confided later, on the porch swing. Just pray you ground him, son. It was progress fragile as spun sugar. Then, the real high-tide Thanksgiving. I hosted turkey brined in Abita, cornbread dressing spiked with andouille, a table groaning under pecan pies. Alex's crew filled seats. Jamal on sax for ambience, Rita dishing dirt, Ellie in a pilgrim hat, giggling at the chaos. My own family? A video call from Chicago, mom's warm smile masking dad's stiff nod. But it was a start. Proud of you, kid, she mouthed off-screen. As we cleared plates, Alex pulled me aside, under the mistletoe I'd hung ironically. This, he said, gesturing to the laughter echoing from the kitchen, is the truth I hid from, worth every scar. Kissed him then, deep and sure. And the music? He grinned, that dimple flashing. Just the soundtrack. Winter whispered in with brass bands parading poinsettias. But our rhythm held. Love not as a fever, but a steady current, carving canyons through stone. Yet, in quiet moments, I wondered. How many truths still lurked behind stages? Not his anymore, ours shared, illuminated. Spring erupted in riotous bloom. Azaleas flaming pink along St. Charles Avenue, the streetcar rattling past like a metronome to our mending. Alex's divorce finalized with a quiet stamp in some clerk's office, freeing papers that felt like shackles shed. He proposed a road trip. Traced the Blues Highway, Clarksdale to Memphis, you and me and the open dash. No gigs, no ghosts, just vinyl crackling on the stereo. His hand on my thigh as we chased cotton fields and catfish shacks. We left at dawn. Ellie waved off by Becca with a tentative truce. Joint barbecue plans simmering for summer. The Delta unfolded like a Faulkner fever dream. Flatlands stitched with soybeans, juke joints sagging under rusted tin roofs. In Clarksdale, at the Delta Blues Museum, we wandered exhibits of Muddy Waters guitars. Alex's eyes alight. This is where it started, he said, fingers ghosting over a fretboard case. Men like me, pouring pain into strings, cause words failed. That night, in a no-tell motel with a neon sign buzzing vacancy. We made love with the windows open to cricket choruses, his body a map I'd memorized anew. Every freckle, every sigh. Marry me, he breathed post-climax. Not a question but a vow, ringless but ringed in sweat. I laughed, tears pricking. Thought you'd never ask. Memphis sealed it. Beale Street's bustle, where he buskied impromptu, pulling me into a harmony on Stand By Me. Tips rained like applause, but the real currency was his gaze. Steady, unshadowed. Back in NOLA, life layered thicker. I launched a podcast, Quarter Notes, interviewing queer artists on hidden histories. Alex co-hosted, his drawl weaving tales of Bayou boys and stage fright. Ellie thrived, first grade with A's in art, Sleepovers where she'd braid my hair with Mardi Gras beads. Becca evolved from adversary to ally, co-parenting texts pinging like a duet. But humanity's arc bends slow, and fractures linger. One muggy July eve, during Essence Fest's throng, Alex collapsed mid-set, guitar clattering as he hit the stage, crowd gasping. Ambulance lights strobed the Crescent's facade like a bad jazz riff. Wait. Dehydration, they said, but tests revealed more: irregular heartbeat, whispers of cardiomyopathy from years of stress, untreated since Baton Rouge docs dismissed a young man's anxiety. I sat vigil in that sterile room, his hand limp in mine, monitors beeping like accusatory metronomes. Should have told you, he mumbled when he stirred, for dripping saline salvation. The flutters started after Ellie, ignored M for the music. Rage flickered, another hidden truth, but empathy doused it. No more hiding, I said, kissing his knuckles. We fight this together. The diagnosis settled like silt. Manageable with meds, lifestyle shifts. No more all-nighters, more greens than gumbo. But it reframed us. Doctor's visits slotted like gigs, Alex's sets trimmed to seated acoustics, my arms his anchor during dizzy spells. Fall brought resilience's harvest. We wed in a civil ceremony at City Park, oaks arching like cathedral vaults, Ellie as flower girl scattering petals with wild abandon, Jamal on sax, Rita officiating with bawdy vows. Do you, Charles, promise to love this fool through every flat note? Laughter rippled, sealing it. Honeymoon, a quiet cabin in the Smokies, no stages, just us. Hikes where he'd lean on me, breaths sinking with mountain winds. You saved me, he said one dusk, fireflies winking like stage lights. Nah, I replied, lacing fingers. We saved each other. Years blurred. Ellie hit teens, all eye rolls and activism, coming out as bi at 14 with our full-throated cheer. Alex's heart steadied, his music maturing. Albums cut in home studios, ballads of redemption topping indie charts. I built the agency into a haven for queer creators. Our home a Creole cottage on the bayou's edge, porch swing our throne. But the heartbreaking truth? It wasn't the hideaway that broke us. It forged. Love, raw and American, isn't spotlight illusions. It's the dim-lit encore, where vulnerabilities harmonize into something eternal. On our 10th anniversary, back at the Crescent, Rita retired, but the tin roof still sang in rain. He took the stage, me front row, hazel eyes locked. This one's for the man who saw behind the curtain, he drawled, launching into Delta Ghosts. Revised, no hauntings, just homecomings. The crowd faded. It was always just us. In that dive bar's glow, I fell again, not for the musician, but the man who'd bared his soul. And stayed.